Rodney, when you said to him, this question is so last season, I guffawed.
Would you therefore also condemn what Hamas did?
Well, Piers, we've had this conversation before. This is so last season. It's like the Israelis are so vicious. They're like demonic. They gloat about killing you while they're killing you.
We are officially and irrevocably done as Lebanese people of our land being used for proxy wars.
He's part of a political family that is extremely anti-Hezbollah, anti-resistance, and basically pro-normalizing with Israel and being like a vassal state of the U.S.
The every lie is a confession thing about Israel just gets to be so intense.
That means being able to support, yes, Israel in its defensive capacities.
There's no such thing as defensive weapons for Israel. If the Israelis and Americans feel like they are backed into a corner, they might actually use a nuke. I'm scared of that. And I think we all should be.
It's an enormous pleasure to have journalist Rania Khalek returning to Bad Faith podcast. You know her as a journalist at Breakthrough News and also likely from her viral, incredible takedown of Piers Morgan just last week. Welcome back, Rania.
Thank you. What a wonderful introduction. It's really good to see you, Brie.
It's always such a pleasure, especially because, Rania, as we were just talking about a little bit before we started recording, you are actually giving us this report from Lebanon.
Yeah. I'm speaking to you from Lebanon. I live in Beirut, but I also am from the mountains. So I've kind of been between the two places because Beirut's really intense and stressful right now. And so it's just been I can't believe we're a month into this. And, I can talk about the political scene of what's happening here. I can talk about what it's like to be on the ground. But one thing I haven't really shared, and I don't want to make this about me because there's people who are, I'm a privileged person here. There's people who are suffering immensely. They've been displaced from their homes. Their homes have been destroyed. They've lost family. They've been injured themselves. There's, over 1,200 people have been killed. But just on a basic level, I watched Gaza happen and there's parts of Lebanon that are being treated like Gaza. And I'm not saying I'm experiencing personally the Gaza model, but just being peripheral to that has been so stressful. I've never experienced this much stress in my entire life. I don't know if this is too much information. I don't really care at this point. I got my period 20 days late because I was so stressed out, which sounds that really sucks. But so did a lot of other women I'm friends with. It's the things this does to your body.
Yeah.
It just you go into survival mode and stop functioning normally. And that sounds so basic, but that's not a good thing to skip a period.
That's hugely reflective of an enormous amount of stress. Skipping periods is the kind of thing that happens when you're under starvation conditions or, really serious physiological stress. And the fact that your sort of environmental stressors have caused this kind of response, that means your body is experiencing something very, very real. I think that's not too much information at all. I don't care what the men.
Sorry, guys.
it's 21st century. They can get down with this kind of discourse. But help me understand. I really take your point that we all watch the Gaza model, and I understand your wanting to put it in context because obviously we're not there yet. But I remember, and I'm sure you do as well, reporting on Gaza in the first few days after October 7th, and all of the assurances from the sort of Israel defenders was, oh, it's not going to get that bad. Everything that's being done now is justified because of October 7th. And, the disproportionality arguments got easier for us to make over time because it very quickly became disproportionate. But imagine if we had said nothing and adopted a sort of a wait and see approach in those early days, simply because not enough time, not enough hours had passed for the maximal harm to have been inflicted. And in the first few days, I remember having these conversations on Rising that were well, only 1,000 people have been killed. Only 5,000 people have been killed. Oh, they're not targeting hospitals. That one was an accident. Oh, they're not targeting infrastructure. Oh, they're still letting some food in. And even someone like Piers Morgan, as we'll get into, had a very different approach back then than he does now because he was waiting for sort of the evidence to pile up before he finally, a year into it, said, okay, maybe Israel is going too far. He didn't have a structural analysis of what was going on, and he refused to listen to what Israeli leadership themselves were saying about what their goals were. So I think you're well within your rights to be waving these kinds of warning flags and to be anticipating the possibility of orders of magnitude more harms.
And they're saying it, like you said, just they say it out loud. They're saying it out loud here. Like a few weeks ago, they dropped leaflets over Beirut. Um, and it sounded like airstrikes when they did it. And one of those leaflets that they dropped literally invoked Gaza. It was like either, turn on Hezbollah and disarm them yourselves, or we will turn Lebanon into Gaza. And that's been something they've been saying about Lebanon since the genocide in Gaza started. So it's been kind of like a psychological warfare method on Lebanon for 2.5 years now, but now they are implementing it in parts of Lebanon. I mean, Lebanon is similar to Gaza, but different in many ways, right? Because Lebanon's a country, right? Gaza is an occupied territory. Lebanon has a government that's recognized by the world. And it's also a diverse country. There's like 18 different religious sects in Lebanon. And as a result, there's certain areas in Lebanon that Israel will almost certainly never touch. That said, they have definitely widened the scope of what they bombed, let's say in 2024, because there was a war on Lebanon in 2024. And it just feels like the sort of areas of safety are getting smaller and smaller. And then you see what's happening in the south of Lebanon, where really Israel's real ambitions in Lebanon are to take the south up to what's called the Litani River, right? So this is what the Zionists have historically, even before Israel's creation, said should be their natural northern border, is this Litani River in Lebanon. And so right now you have these messianic Zionists that are in charge of Israel who are saying they want to occupy and annex and basically settle South Lebanon, depopulated the Lebanese population, which they're basically doing now by issuing these forced evacuation orders, displacing over 1 million people. Yeah.
So just so you know, I've been remiss in not actually having done an episode about Lebanon, it's a twice weekly show, since the escalation happened at the beginning of March. So it might be useful for us to take us through how this latest expansionist venture of Israel started on March 2nd. And then I'd love for you to get us into some of the background into these kind of longstanding conflicts, talking about these long-stated desires to claim territory up to the Litani River, et cetera.
Yeah, that's really important to kind of put that all into context. So March 2nd, well, let's rewind, I guess, to February 28th, when the US and Israel launched this insane war on Iran, which is taking up most of the airtime, obviously, because it's a way bigger war that involves the whole world at this point. And 2 days after that war, on March 2nd, you had Hezbollah fire 6 rockets at Israel, at northern Israel, all of which were either intercepted or landed in an empty field, did no damage, but they launched them in response to 2 things. One, they said it was a retaliation for the Israeli and American assassination of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, who is also religiously the leader that Hezbollah follows in Shia Islam. And they had said before this war started that would be a red line for them. And they are allied with the Iranians, receive funding and weapons from the Iranians. And then the second reason was the ceasefire violations. So since November of 2024, there was a war, a 2-month-long war, a massive escalation by the Israelis on Lebanon, between Hezbollah and Israel, that ended with the ceasefire brokered by the Americans. And since that ceasefire went into effect, the Israelis had violated it over 15,000 times, which sounds like such a comical number. That's a lot of ceasefire violations. And those ceasefire violations included near daily bombings, the killing of over 370 people in Lebanon. And the Israelis occupied 5 points that then expanded into 8 points on the border areas of the south of Lebanon. And they refused to withdraw, which was also a ceasefire violation. So Israel violates the ceasefire every day over 15,000 times. Hezbollah doesn't fire a single bullet, right? They abide by the ceasefire completely, even doing what they said they would do, stipulated in the ceasefire, which was disarming south of the Litani River. And so March 2nd rolls around, and in the statement on why they retaliated against the Israelis, Hezbollah says this is also a response to 15 months of ceasefire violations that killed over 370 people, over 15,000 times, blah, 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 blah. And so Israel responds by unleashing this massive escalation on Lebanon. And it happens right away. I actually woke up that night to the sound of Israel bombing Dahi, which is the southern suburbs of Beirut. And actually, in the neighborhood I live in, I typically don't hear those bombings, but this was so loud it woke me up.
Wow.
And then the rest of it is the last month of hell, which has been Israel's issuing these forced displacement orders, much similar to what we saw in Gaza, which includes the entire south of Lebanon, not even up to the Litani River, up to a river even north of the Litani, which is called the Zahrani River, and also issuing forced displacement orders for the entire southern suburbs of Beirut, basically all the Shia neighborhoods in the southern suburbs of Beirut that are considered Hezbollah's support base. And so that altogether amounts to a fifth of the country being displaced, over 1 million people. Lebanon is a really small country. It's a country of about 5 million people. So that's a lot of displaced people. And in addition to that, they've killed over 1,200 people at this point, including over 120 children. They're doing a lot of the tactics we saw in Gaza. They're just bombing civilian homes. The Israelis have issued basically a policy to raise all of the first layer of the southern Lebanese border villages. So they are just destroying every structure, which is the Gaza model. They actually are saying that we are implementing the Gaza model in the border villages. They've destroyed the bridges over the Litani River that connect to the north of Lebanon to the south of Lebanon. They are intentionally targeting paramedics, and they're saying it. They're openly saying basically all ambulances in the south are just covers for Hezbollah with zero evidence. And so they've killed over 50 medics. They've damaged or destroyed over 128 health facilities. They are intentionally murdering journalists whose opinions they don't like, who are reporting from the south. Over the weekend, it was really devastating. They murdered Ali Shwaib, he's like an institution in and of himself. This guy is one of the most well-known, renowned war correspondents in Lebanon who covers everything in the south. He works for a station called Al Manar, which is affiliated with Hezbollah, but is a media outlet. Like, it's one of the most watched media outlets in Lebanon, especially by pro-resistance people who are from Hezbollah's base of support. And they make up a huge chunk of the country. They also killed in the targeted strike on his car. They also murdered Fatima Fdouni, who is this young woman who's a correspondent for Al Mayadeen, a pro-resistance media outlet in Lebanon. A really, really brave young woman who has been reporting on all of these escalations since the genocide in Gaza started. And they also killed her brother, who is a freelance photojournalist. And what's crazy, Brie, is like so there's these Arabic spokespeople that the Israelis have on Twitter, right? There's 2 of them. And I actually have them on notification because they're the ones that's where you get the forced evacuation orders. They issue them on X. And so I have them on notification so I can see where they're issuing displacement orders. And also, like, if they say they're going to hit something, because you want to know if it's going to be around you. It's so dystopian. Like, that's how you operate.
Wait, so when the Israelis are saying we're the most moral army because we tell you before we strike something, they're expecting people to do Twitter check-ins?
Yeah.
That's the notification
And that's if they even issue it. That's because they don't always say, they just do it sometimes. But yes, it's and these forced evacuation orders, typically they do them at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. So it's like people are asleep. It's actually, that's why it can feel quite frightening to sleep because you're just like, how am I going to know if like something around me is like about to get bombed and I need to like leave my building in the middle of the night? That's like everyone's fear, even if you live in so-called safe areas. And that's if they issue a warning, because they don't always even do those, 30 minutes before an hour before warnings at 2 a.m. on Twitter. And the one way that people will know if it's also is like people will shoot guns in the middle of the night so that it'll wake people up in the area so they know to leave. But it's just imagine you're sleeping at night in your home and you're woken up at like 3 a.m. with this warning of death, and you have to quickly, like, everybody's got a bag packed ready to go with their essential things just in case that happens. Like, that's life right now for people in Lebanon. But anyways, they killed these. They've just real quick to get back to the journalists they killed over the weekend. I don't know if you saw this, but the Israelis issued this like image of Ali Shwaib, the journalist they targeted openly, deliberately. And they were like, he was a member of Hezbollah's Redwan forces, which is like Hezbollah's special operations forces, if you will. And they put this like photoshopped image of him, half in his journalist attire and then half in military fatigues. And then
Oh,
they
yes, I
told
did see
Fox,
that.
they told Fox News it was photoshopped. I mean, it was obvious it was photoshopped, but like they don't even have evidence. This guy's affiliated or in Hezbollah, like they said, he's not. This guy is a well-known, like it's really, I think it'd be really hard to be a 24/7 war correspondent in addition to like in an intelligence unit of Hezbollah. But okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, Rania, it's exhausting that we're still having to go through the rigmarole, the fiction of pretending that any of the things that, any of the excuses that Israel puts forward as to why they commit any number of war crimes, whether it's killing journalists or bombing civilians or bombing hospitals or targeting ambulances, is legitimate. Like, and this is, I felt this frustration when you were talking with Piers Morgan, and he asked you sort of unbelievably at this late hour, 2.5 years into a genocide, whether or not you condemn Hezbollah. I want to play a clip of that and then come back to you.
So would
him
you,
with cigarettes.
okay, listen, I hear you. So would you therefore also condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th?
Well, Piers, we've had this conversation before. This is so last season, the condemnation game. I'm going to stick by the same answer I already
those
gave
people
you.
are still dead, sadly. So let me just ask you the
I'm going to
question
stick
again.
by the answer I already gave you. I'm not going to condemn people who are living under annihilation and genocide for resisting their genocide.
No, it's fine,
I'm
but you're
just not.
condemning the actions of the IDF, and yet, as
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
and I know, and the world knows, on October the 7th, 3,000 Hamas terrorists poured over the border in 3 different waves. They attacked innocent people at a music festival. They attacked innocent people in kibbutzes. They murdered indiscriminately people. They killed 1,200. They kidnapped over 250, including a baby and Holocaust survivors. They did despicable things all day that day. And yet you are very, very quick to condemn the IDF. And trust me, no one's been more condemnatory of IDF actions when I think they're wrong than I have. But you won't condemn Hamas. And that's been my problem and why I've always asked that question of people who come on like yourself, because the reluctance to condemn terrorism when it's clearly terrorism and it's the indiscriminate, brutal killing and murder of innocent people. Well, you can smile. I don't find it funny.
Piers, I don't find anything funny. I'm in a war zone right now.
But explain why you find why are you so. Here's my question, right? Rania, here's my question. Here's my question, Rania. My question is this: why are you so quick to condemn the IDF for their atrocities as you see it, but so reluctant to condemn the same kind of atrocities from Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis? What's the difference? Atrocities are atrocities. They should all be condemned, shouldn't they?
Lebanon as a Lebanese person under the situation I'm in, to condemn resistance to a brutal supremacist settler colony is like asking an Austrian Jew in the 1940s to condemn resistance to Nazi Germany because atrocities. That's all I'm hearing from you, because my entire life, my family has been subjected to constant aggression and war crimes by Israel, because since its existence and founding in this region as a settler colony, a Jewish settler colony implanted in this region, and in a region that's not majority Jewish, so it has to commit constant ethnic cleansing and demographic engineering to exist as a ethno-state, not a normal country, a settler colony ethno-state. Just constant aggression and torture and rape and land theft against my people. They've currently displaced over 1 million in Lebanon, and they're saying they can't return. You have Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich saying they're going to annex southern Lebanon, depopulate it of Lebanese, and replace it with Jewish settlers, just like they've done in the West Bank.
Rodney, when you said to him, this question is so last season, I guffawed. Because if it does, it feels completely anachronistic to be still asking this, especially Piers Morgan. The second you think he's sort of come a ways from where he used to be, he reverses something like this. Not even to mention that, to put this in broader context, you were interviewed after Naftali Bennett was interviewed earlier in the segment, and he got none of the same demands to condemn what Israel has been doing, either in Gaza, the West Bank, or Lebanon. And he was asked sort of questions. I mean, do you think that the pogroms happening in the West Bank are bad? And Naftali Bennett, who it should be noted is angling to be, to be prime minister, and so has some political incentive to criticize Netanyahu's government's actions, says, yes, well, I wouldn't do it that way.
Talking of crazy homicidal nuts, who want to do bad things to people. Let's just end with what is happening on the West Bank, with some appalling incidents involving extremist settlers there, receiving global condemnation. Another former Prime Minister of your country, Ehud Olmert, said this week there should be an ICC intervention. There's been a new report come out that no prosecutions have happened in Israel for settler killings in the past decade. There have been some appalling scenes in the last week. Can you condemn those?
Of course. I didn't wait for you. I condemn it in Israel. So did the Prime Minister. But I'll tell you, look, we are a country with rule of law.
But it's not asked to give these broad condemnations in the same way. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I also just want to say, so when I was on, I had to sit through that interview because he was on before I was. And I'm sitting there watching him. And at one point he tells Piers, you know, I've been in southern Lebanon, because he's been an Israeli military fighter who's invaded Lebanon before. He's like, I've been in southern Lebanon. I've been in the homes in southern Lebanon. Every home has a kitchen, a child's bedroom, and a rocket room. So we have to destroy them.
They attack Israel. They build many rocket launchers and disperse them across Lebanon, including in houses. Let me tell you a personal story. In my previous life, before entering politics, I was a reservist, a commander in a special unit, and I commanded operations, search and destroy missions on rocket launchers in Lebanon of Hezbollah. I was an expert. If you ever need that service, give me a call. And one day I came into a town in southern Lebanon, into a house. There's a living room, a parent's room, kids' room, and a freaking rocket room. There was a rocket launcher in the house with a movable ceiling. So when we attack that rocket launcher, obviously that house will be destroyed. But who's responsible? Of course it's Hezbollah responsible, and the stupid family who places a rocket in their home. Would you place a rocket in your children's room?
Well, no, I wouldn't. But I think the issue becomes...
Well, they do. And if you do, if you place a rocket launcher in your home will be destroyed.
Like he actually said, I'm just like, this is like
so
insane.
Yeah. And Piers just accepts this. He accepts, and this is what's so dangerous. I don't mean to make every conversation into these conversations about sort of rhetoric and how to, you know,
but it's important.
How to be.
It's important.
But if there's one thing that we know about Israel that everyone should be very, which should be very clear about Israel at this juncture, is that the scaffolding on which their entire project rests is these kind of rhetorical maneuvers that deflect from the substance of what Israel, that frame everything that Israel does that is bad as an accident, that they're doing their best, that they're the most moral army, that everything that everyone else is doing is unprovoked, is done by terrorists, and doesn't, in the Israelis' actions, don't invite the same kind of scrutiny, because we're supposed to trust their hearts and souls are always attempting to do the right thing. The human shielding conversation, Israelis openly talk about putting their infrastructure in the middle of Tel Aviv, et cetera. If it gets bombed, it's because everyone else is targeting civilians. When they actively talk about how a child's bedroom has a rocket room adjacent and that justifies killing those children, you can see it doesn't even really occur to Piers Morgan to question the underlying premise that it is therefore okay to kill civilians as long as you can concoct some justification of having once seen something when you were doing your, mandatory service 20 years ago.
No, it's completely outrageous. And what's even more infuriating is like, I mean, I've been in and out during wars before, but I think this is like the worst one. And I mean, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this without like being canceled. I'm amazed. I'm amazed that people in this region are able to still differentiate between like Zionism and Judaism. And I say that because like, it's like the Israelis are so vicious. They're like demonic. Like they gloat about killing you while they're killing you. And their lies are so obvious and they terrorize you while they're doing it. And they say they're doing it in the name of the Jewish state. And like, I'm, living it right now. And like, I grew up in the West. So like, I'm like, of course I can make these distinctions and differentiations, but like, I get why people would feel differently, given the way the Israelis behave. And given also like, when I think about I'm just watching this happen in front of me and I'm experiencing it. And it's a fucking nightmare. And all of these like organizations, these mainstream Jewish organizations in the US, like have no objection to it. And if anything, justify it. And I'm just like, wow. And I'm not trying to discount like my Jewish friends who are like ardent anti-Zionists, who are like on my side on this and working to stop it. But I just gotta say, and like, I'm just also like, as this was happening, I bring it up too, because I know you just had Susan on.
Yeah.
And it was a
Yeah,
fantastic
thinking of her.
episode. And I love Susan. I love her so much. And as like, I think it was a few weeks into this war that I see Zohran condemning her for like saying that the Israelis are like the worst people ever, or whatever she said. And I'm like watching it from Lebanon as I'm like, there's bombs, like buildings around me are literally being taken down by massive bombs. And I'm just like, I've never cared less about trying to make people feel okay about like, okay, you're not an anti-Semite, right? Prove you're not an anti-Semite. I've just never cared less about that in this moment.
Yeah.
I guess it's like, I don't know how else to say it.
You can hear it. You can hear it in your response. And it was really cathartic. It was extraordinary. I mean, like, but it does feel like there's a shift happening. Even in the later segment with Cenk Uygur, I wouldn't say he's been on the vanguard of this sort of unapologetic approach to talking about what's going on. But Piers tries to set him up with the Canary, what was it called, Canary Mission video, that Zionist right-wing sting operation where they try to get videos of you saying things that are cancelable and yada yada. And they've sort of supercut Cenk Uygur at one point saying how everything is conflated and to accuse Israel of having bought the media or to have financial interest, et cetera, is anti-Semitic. And then cut to him more recently saying Zionists do own the media, Zionists do own our political system, and trying to catch him up in this kind of sophistry.
I want to play you a clip, which is what one anti-Semitism campaign group called Canary Mission have highlighted. They say that you flopped from calling out anti-Semitic tropes and stereotypes to now perpetuating every one of them against Israel. Let's take a look.
Oh, who do you think is really the one responsible? They always say the Jews, because they think, oh, they're the puppet masters. There's anti-Semitic tropes, etc., right? And it's obvious that they control us. And now Trump is out here like a puppet. Yes, I said puppet, and you could suck it. Puppets for Israel. Puppet regimes, Israeli puppet. Yo, you guys like your money. I mean, you can't get any more anti-Semitic than this.
Okay.
Owe me more money. You owe me more money. Give me money. Give me 310 billion isn't enough. The Jews own the media, right? So that's the anti-Semitic trope. This isn't control of our media by Israeli forces. The root of all of these theories is always the Jews control the.
Now, Cenk, when you watch that, there does seem to be shifting sands between what you're saying originally and what you then say.
Absolutely not.
And I will say the clip looks bad, but not for the reasons that Piers thinks it looks bad. It looks bad to me because it demonstrates how so many of us were caught up in bending over backwards so hard to not conflate Judaism and anti-Semitism that you were fully unwilling to even acknowledge the obvious truth of there being an Israeli lobby that had captured our government, or that there were Zionist interests. I mean, it's gotten impossible to ignore at this point with the Ellisons and all of the TikTok and all the purchases that have happened in the last year or so. But that has been the case for a long time, since before October 7th, that Zionists had a disproportionate influence over the control of media and influence the messaging. And again, that's Zionist, that's Zionism, that's not Israel. But now there seems to be a panic because it's mask off, and people, even like Cenk, who were bending over backward, not to say the obvious at one time, are now saying it openly. And he's being criticized for the shift in that direction, when, if anything, we should all be criticized for not having told the truth in the past.
No, absolutely. And especially like, I think you see the mask off so hard, especially with the war with Iran, when you look at the majority, or there's like a huge chunk of Americans who are like, oh, this is benefiting Israel. Oh, and I want to be careful how I say this too, because I do think like, at the end of the day, I'm still a believer, and I know people are different on this, and that's fine. And I'm like happy to debate it or whatever. I still do believe that the US is actually in charge. I do think that like the biggest Zionists are those who are in charge of the US, because Zionism is a project of the West at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And benefits like Israeli hegemony is American hegemony in the region. However, there is daylight between like what an Israeli administration wants for Iran and what a US administration wants for Iran. They both want to like weaken it, but they have different ideas for how, and that's where the daylight is. And it does seem like Trump was in fact lied to by both neocons like Lindsey Graham, as well as like Netanyahu and a bunch of Likudniks. And so there's a lot of Americans who are like, well, this war is clearly benefiting Iran, not the Americans. And if I was a Zionist, if I was the Israelis, I would be freaked out by that. And I think that is something that they're upset with someone like Cenk Uygur about, because he is basically like pushing that line, and Israel's becoming increasingly unpopular as a result, because whether it's true or not, a lot of Americans now believe that Israel dragged the US and dragged Trump into a war on Iran that's now destroying the global economy, that's going to make gas prices go up, and that's going to lead to the death of a bunch of American soldiers.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about specifically the Hezbollah of it all. There was another guest in the course of this segment who was Lebanese, who was making the argument that the majority of the population of Lebanon does not want Lebanon to be made vulnerable, Lebanese resources to be pulled into this war with Israel, and that people just want to stay out of it, and that Lebanon should not be conflated with the desires and interests of Hezbollah. And he wasn't asked to condemn Hezbollah, but it felt like if he were, he would happily do so.
So what I want to say, using your platform, is that we are officially and irrevocably done as Lebanese people of our land being used for proxy wars. And when I say we, I speak not only in my name, but in the name of millions of Lebanese, an absolutely astounding majority of which refuse to be part of this conflict. Now, some of your viewers might not know that from simply navigating X the entire day and listening to Ideologue, but I brought to you today a poll conducted by Gallup, one of the most respectable US institutions conducting polls in Lebanon. And what does the poll say? The poll say, when they asked, do you believe that the Lebanese army should be the only group that bears weapons and not the militias? 79% of Lebanese said yes.
Okay, so help us understand what the internal dynamics are, in fact, in Lebanon.
So the guy who he had on is someone called Saleh Meshnouk, who is the son of the former Minister of Interior, who's actually a really corrupt man who is known for being like a thief in Lebanon, and being a part of like there was a banking collapse in Lebanon that was a result of a bunch of thieves who were in charge of the banking industry, and his father's being known as like being a big part of that. And anyways, I didn't attack him personally when Piers asked me what I thought about him, because I didn't want to make it personal, but he's part of a political family that is extremely anti-Hezbollah, anti-resistance, and basically pro-normalizing with Israel and being like a vassal state of the US. And I don't know if you watched his entire interview or not, but I did. So he sat there and he kept saying, this is a proxy war. He only mentioned the IRGC, only mentioned Iran. He didn't say who it's a proxy war between. He barely mentioned the Israelis, if at all. If you watch his interview and know nothing about what's happening in Lebanon, you'd have no idea that the Israelis are even destroying Lebanon right now. And it's because he is a part of a political constituency in Lebanon that has historically and continues to be perfectly fine with the Israelis bombing their political opponents to weaken them. Because at the end of the day, Hezbollah has a huge constituency that elects them to power. They're a part of the biggest political bloc in Lebanon. Like Israel likes to call itself the only democracy in the Middle East. Lebanon's actually a democracy that has democratic elections. And in fact, there's so much gerrymandering in Lebanon to make the Shia constituency have a smaller representation in power, that even though the Hezbollah MPs and their allies in parliament actually get more votes, they still get a smaller chunk of representation, but still have the biggest political bloc. So I say all that because I understand why Piers Morgan invited this guy on. He absolutely represents a segment of the Lebanese population, both in the diaspora and in Lebanon, who is anti-resistance and who wants a Lebanese state that is basically like the Gulf states. They want to be like Saudi Arabia, like Kuwait, like the Bahrainis. They want to just basically be a partner as they see it of America, but a proxy of America. And if that means normalizing with Israel, that's fine. Because at the end of the day, like, I don't know. It's actually crazy to me. I understand if they had that sentiment maybe like 20 years ago. But if you look at how the Gulf states are being treated by the Americans right now, they're basically cannon fodder. They're human shields for the Israelis and for the Americans.
Someone with that position, are they indifferent to Israel's stated goals of territorial expansion into Lebanon? Is there a sense that like that's giving away the southern chunk of Lebanon is a price they're willing to pay? Are they just confident that it's not ever going to go farther than the Litani River?
Some of them. So some of them think there's different categories here. Some of them believe, like what you just said, that they don't care about the South. Who cares? Let the Israelis have it. I don't live there. It's not my problem.
In the South, it's a poorer, less developed part of the country.
It was historically speaking, it was very rural, very peasant, farmland. It's since then the South has become much more developed, especially as like the Shias of Lebanon have had more political representation. A lot of them left and went and like worked in Africa or in Europe and made a lot of money and like used it to build homes and help develop their communities in the South, use the money that they made there. So historically, yes, not as much now, but they're still having their villages and homes destroyed. A part of it is it's a sectarian element, right? Like the South is all Shia, a few Christian villages, but who cares? We'll sacrifice them, give it to Israel. There's another part of this subset of people that actually have like swallowed their own propaganda. They believe that if Hezbollah just put down their weapons and stopped firing at Israel, and they really believe it's on behalf of Iran. Like as far as they see it, Hezbollah is just like an extension of Iran, using Lebanon as a playground. And if Iran and Hezbollah would just stop, Israel would like shake our hands and we could have tea together and all be best friends and it'd be fine. And they just ignore Israel openly stating that they have a greater Israel project, and that includes southern Lebanon.
Yeah, I want to say specifically, there was who was his name? Israel Katz, who specifically, I mean, this isn't like conjecture. He tweeted out, Israel's policy in Lebanon is clear. Where there is terror and missiles, there are no homes, no residents, and the IDF will control the security zone up to the Litani. Yeah, like we are going to control the.
He said it out loud, like. When he said it out loud, like he means that he means they want to occupy up to the Litani, and he even said that there's Lebanese Shias specifically that they've displaced are not allowed to return until Israelis feel safe again, and we know that means never.
That means never.
Yes, exactly. We know that means never. So it's like I also want to clarify, like the people I'm talking about, I don't think they represent the majority of Lebanese. It's not an insignificant number of Lebanese.
Well,
but
tell me about that, because he had charts and graphs and polls and seemed to be very confident that it was like I think he said 80% of Lebanon.
So he was using a poll. So he was using a poll and he was very misleading about it. That poll said that 80% of Lebanon believes the state should have a monopoly on arms. I mean, I would love for that too. I would put myself in that category.
Wait, just to say the Lebanese army, as opposed to Hezbollah, should be the only armed party.
Should be the one in charge of Lebanon's defense. Yes, I absolutely believe that. The problem in Lebanon is that the army is not allowed to defend Lebanon. Literally, they can't. They're not allowed to. The Lebanese army.
What do you mean by that? Yeah.
Well, so the Lebanese army is armed by the Americans. And when I say armed by the Americans, I mean with very basic weapons that could never be used to confront the Israelis, ever. And a lot of the weapons are hand-me-down weapons that like don't even entirely work. The weapons the Lebanese army is given by the Americans is meant to be used for internal security and internal confrontation with Hezbollah and no more. They are also given donations by Gulf monarchies. And I believe there's some sort of relationship with the Europeans as well. But all of that means that the donors, if your donors are these people, you are not allowed to confront Israel. The Israelis just killed a Lebanese army soldier today. The Lebanese army can't fire back, even in self-defense. That's why they're incapable of defending the country. So yes, theoretically, I would love this country of Lebanon that I am from, that my family comes from, that I live in. I would love for there to be a national army that can defend me and my family and the rest of the people in this country from external aggression, but they're not allowed to. And that is why
Just to put a finer point on it, you're saying it would be fair to say that America and whatever European countries might be providing the Lebanese army with weaponry is intentionally neutering them or intentionally under equipping them so that they have to, they slash can't defend themselves slash have to rely on Hezbollah, and then Hezbollah becomes a useful target, a useful stand-in that justifies aggression in the same way that Hamas, with its funding from Israel, serves this kind of role. It serves a political role as a good villain, as a good enemy for the West.
It's similar, but it's similar, but in the sense that Lebanon's an actual country, right? Like, I'm not trying to diminish Palestine at all. It's just the fact of the matter is, like, Lebanon is a country that should be allowed to have an army that can confront an aggressive neighbor. But they're literally, like you said, the word neutered is perfect. They're neutered from doing that because of the donors that they depend on. And as a result, Israel is an aggressive country that's constantly trying to occupy. This is the 7th invasion of Lebanon. And the people of the South, like, they don't have a choice. They're not protected by their government. They don't have an army protecting them. So they took it upon themselves. Like, Hezbollah is the people of the South. Like, they come from, those are people from southern villages who've organized themselves into a military force to protect their villages because they've historically been neglected. Like, this isn't new for Lebanon. It's kind of always been like this. The South has always been neglected in this way. And, the Iranians give them weapons. They give them funding. They're ideological allies. And so that's how that relationship works. And without that, had that not existed, there'd be no southern Lebanon. It would be called northern Israel. Like, there's no other way to understand it,
And the people who adopt this view, are they, what is their, how do they respond? How do they think about or talk about Gaza in the context of this normalization? Again, it strikes me as so naive. Not that I want to be, I can't stand in and, project myself onto, as someone in the West who's not so directly implicated. But it seems so deeply naive, given Israel's obvious expansionist goals for religious reasons and strategic reasons. And how are they, when they believe this isn't our fight? Let me ask it this way. You described, and this was such an important point, I think, and I saw you trying to really make this clear in the context of the interview, as it was, as Pierce and Naftali Bennett were trying to characterize it differently. Naftali Bennett characterized it as Hezbollah randomly taking a first swing.
Let's turn to the Lebanon, because several days after the attacks on Iran, Israel attacked the Lebanon. Lebanese authorities say over 1,000 people have since been...
Piers, I have to correct you, just so you get your facts right. That's not what happened.
Sorry, let me rephrase my... No, you're right. I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say, and let me rephrase that. Hezbollah launched strikes against...
No, it's not what I'm going to say. It's just a fact.
I know. That's why
us. It's just a fact.
I am uniquely self-correcting myself before I even let you answer to correct me, which is probably the first time I've done it. Just to rephrase my inaccurately phrased question.
That's because you're a decent guy. Even if we disagree, at least you listen and you look at the facts as they are.
Do you know what? I like to be fair, and I like to be accurate. And if I get accused of being inaccurate and unfair, it doesn't work. Exactly. So several days after the attacks on Iran, Hezbollah launched strikes against Israel, and Israel then responded.
You sort of recharacterized it as Hezbollah, Lebanon not responding to over 1,000 ceasefire violations, in part because the Lebanese army cannot really meaningfully respond, but then sort of taking advantage strategically of Iran's, of the war with Iran to finally get their lick back, to finally respond.
Yeah. So Hezbollah's angle here, right? Like why respond now? Why not respond for 15 months? And look, and when they first responded, people who like them, some people who like them were pissed. Like, they were just like, what are you thinking? You're crazy to do this. Like, you didn't do this for 15 months, but you did it after the Iran war starts. So some of the thinking seems to have been the Iran war is a perfect opportunity because now Israel is distracted. And the Israelis have admitted as much. They're like 70% of what they're doing is focused on Iran. The other 30% is focused on Lebanon. So it's like you're dealing with Israel when it's not at its full capacity. That's the right time to fight it. That's the thinking. The other thinking is, okay, this is the big war, right? This is the big regional war that everyone's always been talking about. It's eventually going to happen, where Iran is now like going all in. So this is a war for survival, not just for Iran, but if Iran's your biggest sponsor, it's also a war of survival for you. So like, if we want to have a resistance that continues to exist, we need to jump in on this so we can be a part of the settlement. And you do see the Iranians saying any settlement has to include Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon and no more freedom of action, which is what the Israelis call it. They call it freedom of action, which means they can bomb Lebanon whenever they want to. Whether they'll get that, whether like Hezbollah and Iran will get that is a different story. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But the point is, from Hezbollah's strategic thinking, it comes to like a conclusion of like, if we're going to respond, we waited until we rebuilt enough to respond because they were severely weakened in 2024. And they clearly did rebuild, and they're operating quite impressively so far on the ground with the Israelis. And they're demonstrating that they have a good amount of firepower. They're shooting regularly at the Israelis, both who have invaded Lebanon and also out that are actually in Israel. So strategically, it does make sense. It does make sense that now would be the time to go in.
So, but in the context of all of those ceasefire violations, the people who are, how would you characterize them? Not isolationists, but the people who want to kind of stay out of it, you know, that cohort, are they also just willing to ignore all of those 1,000+ ceasefire violations?
Yes. They actually are. And there's like different segments of people too. And like Lebanon has so many different political tendencies, even among this sort of crowd of like, we want to normalize with the Israelis. Like there's the Christian nationalist crowd who are like these right-wing Christian parties who have always wanted to normalize with Israel. They see Israel as like almost a model state that they'd like to be like, because Lebanon should be a Christian state, the way that Israel's a Jewish state. And they've historically had a relationship with the Israelis. There's those groups of people. The guy that was on Piers does not come from that crowd because he's from a Sunni family. He's from an elite Sunni family. So there's the elite crowd, right? That are like the richest people in Lebanon who want to have basically, that's why they want to be like the Gulf states. Like, you normalize with Israel, you become best friends with the Americans. Maybe it'll screw most of the country who are just going to be impoverished, but who cares about them? I'm going to get rich quick, baby. Yeah. Like, it's that mentality. Like, they're happy to sell off half the country. And they will sit there and repeat the talking points. I don't know if they know any better. I don't know what's in their heart. I don't know if, like, they actually believe that Israel will actually leave Lebanon alone if Hezbollah just stops firing. I don't think they really care. I don't think they care about the South. They almost like have a penchant and hatred for the Shias of the South so much they want to see them get punished. Like, so they're getting some level of enjoyment almost out of this. And I don't know if that's how he feels, but he's the crowd he's around. I know for a fact some of them feel that way because I know the kinds of Lebanese who have been lobbying the U.S. government for this exact scenario, and they're getting it right now. It's really disgusting. Not as bad as the Iranian diaspora, but a close second.
Yeah, can you talk about that for a second? I mean, the sort of glib description of the Iranian diaspora is like they're just like the Cuban diaspora, like all the bad ones left. All the bad ones left. Is that too reductive? I mean, how do you understand? Because let me tell you,
they didn't all leave Lebanon. They didn't all leave Lebanon. Some of them still live here, unfortunately.
I got to tell you, you really can't take me anywhere because I was at a party a few weeks ago and I don't know how I got into it, but I was in a crowd. Most of my friends were all very politically aligned. It was a friend of a friend who I thought were all politically aligned. And I'm talking to this guy. I don't know where he's from. He's brown. I'm like, okay, so we're going at it. We're having a friendly conversation. And somehow Iran comes up. No, somehow Israel comes up. Just straight up Israel, I guess, maybe in the context of Iran. And I say something casual about how much Israel sucks. But, I wasn't getting into it. I was just like, oh, yeah, Israel. And he starts taking a position. He was like, well, I don't know. I mean, Iran shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. I was like, what's happening? And then we started talking, and then I was like, well, where the hell are you from? And he goes, Iran. And I was like, oh.
One of those. One of those. It's amazing, isn't it? It's incredible. It's incredible. Like, okay, I don't know what to do with these kinds of people. I think that have just such colonized minds and they want to be white so badly. I don't know if that's what that guy wants. I get disliking, like, okay, maybe you don't like the Islamic Republic. Fine. Like that there's have your criticisms. But like to suggest that Iran did nothing to provoke this. Like they were bombed in the middle of negotiations. It was like the supreme crime of crimes, a preemptive war of aggression.
Yeah.
You know? Like they started off by decapitating the entire like leadership of a sovereign country, totally unprecedented, and then killing like over like 100 little schoolgirls. I mean, how can your brain like see that and understand it as anything but just like a horrible, vicious crime on a country, no matter how much you dislike the leadership?
Well, you described it as, I don't know if I heard you say this on Breakthrough News or where, but it would be akin to America, like liberals rooting for China to invade America. Okay.
Well,
in order to get rid of Donald Trump.
Yes, that's exactly that guy. This is exactly what it is. Like that the guy, Saleh Meshnouk, who was on Piers Morgan, he represents a mentality that's so similar to that Iranian diaspora that's like cheering this on, because they literally want imperial powers, vicious apartheid settler powers like the US and Israel to take out their domestic political opponents. It's disgusting and it's treacherous, in my opinion. Like, and in the case of Lebanon, I can just say, like, you can't win democratically, so you want America to bring you to power. You know, that's what it comes down to. And it's sick. And it's exactly like it would be insane to watch any political party in the US cheer on an outside invader to get rid of its domestic political opponents. We would call that treachery, because that's exactly what it is. It would be unacceptable.
I mean, not to also spend so much time in the Hasbara land, but I got to tell you, watching the Naftali Bennett interview and the prelude to yours was really an exercise. I don't know how you didn't come on screen like just hot, just like fiery hot, and without feeling like compelled to address some of the stuff that he said. I was tempted to just like play it back and get you to like respond to it point by point, like this is a live stream. But I'm not going to make you. Not going to make you do that.
Thank you.
I did want to get into just a couple of these claims that were made, though. The every lie is a confession thing about Israel just gets to be so intense. There was this colloquy about how Iran wants to wipe Israel off the map. Like kept getting said, Iran wants to wipe Israel off the map.
You've got a country that explicitly says it wants to annihilate my country. I don't think there's another case right now in the world, at least I can't recall, that one country says we are going to totally destroy another, and they act towards building it. And now we saw that they actually mean it.
Right. That being offered up in the context of Israel fully saying we want to territorially expand into Lebanon and all of these weird religious proclamations. Oh, we're starting the war on Purim. This is all about Amalek. This is greater Israel. You have Mike Huckabee saying the same thing in domestic interviews. And also in the context of Israel having nuclear power itself.
Yes.
So how did you respond to this colloquy about one, and Piers did push back on him a little bit there, saying, how can you claim that Iran is close to having nuclear capability when Donald Trump claimed last year that it had successfully wiped out its ability to do that back in July? And well, let me start there. How he basically said, how can you claim that this is still an issue?
And it's very painful to dismantle this, but we have to do it if we want to survive.
Okay, that's not an answer to my question, though.
Yeah, I like doing that, Piers, from time to time.
I've noticed.
Look, we're gonna.
But the part that Piers doesn't ask is, and also Israel has nuclear capacity, and that is not at issue.
So I think that's a really important point to raise that he should raise, and of course didn't. But there's a couple things there. First of all, yes, we know that Iran was not trying to get a nuclear weapon, nor was it close to getting a nuclear weapon. Even U.S. intelligence agencies say that. You had Joe Kent come out and say that basically after he resigned. The only people saying that are like Trump and Netanyahu, right? But to dig a little bit deeper, the irony of all ironies is that in the midst of making this big, drama about Iran and nuclear weapons, America is the only country in the world to have used one on Japan. Like, they have nukes and they've used them. I would be more concerned about that. On top of that, the Israelis are the only country in the region to have nuclear weapons, and they have a military doctrine that says they'll use them if they ever feel they need to. If they're going down, they'll take the rest of the world down with them. And also, I think something to keep in mind about Israel that's really disturbing is they have demonstrated over the last 2.5 years that they have no problem with that mass extermination. They're totally fine with it. So a country with nuclear weapons run by a bunch of religious zealots who have no problem with mass extermination is actually not Iran. It's Israel. And I am terrified of that. Like, I'm really terrified about the prospect of if the Israelis and Americans feel like they are backed into a corner and have no way out of this Iran war that they have dragged themselves and the rest of the world into, they might actually use a nuke. I'm scared of that. And I think we all should be.
And what does it look like to be backed into a corner? Because I have seen people talk about how the reservist situation in Israel is fraught. They're running out of soldiers to keep litigating all of these conflicts, that it's destroying their national economy. There are all of these ominous proclamations. I saw something about there being a kind of a earthquake Richter scale report out of Israel that suggested they were testing bombs underground and preparing themselves for some kind of attack. There are all these ominous photos of the skyline of Tehran and the beautiful mountains in the background, where people are talking about how Israel has made a miscalculation, that Iran isn't a small population that can be easily overwhelmed, that the only way strategically that Israel can come out of this is by using the nuclear option. And there have also been, even this morning as we're recording on Monday, people, these leaks that are coming out saying that people internal to the administration are worried about what Israel might do.
Mm-hmm.
All of this feels doomsday-ish until it happens. It seems alarmist perhaps until it happens. But how worried are you?
I mean, do I think it's the most likely outcome? No, but the fact that it's even a small likelihood is terrifying. Because look at Israel's entire military doctrine against anyone it perceives as challenging it, is to literally smash everything. And Gaza's emblematic of that, right? The Gaza model is literally destroy every structure in existence and make the conditions of life so abysmal that it can't even support human existence. That is Gaza, right? That's what Israel's turned Gaza into. It's a dead zone. And that's what it's trying to do in South Lebanon as well. That's what, it plans to do in certain parts of Syria if it doesn't get its way. Basically everywhere around it. I don't think the Israelis would use a nuke that close to their own border, but Iran is not close to their border. So I'm worried they would on Iran, especially because, like you said, all of these things they thought were possible. They thought they could cause unrest in the country. They really believed that. They believed if they weaken the regime enough, as they see it, that's their words. If we weaken the regime enough, all these forces that the Mossad supports inside of Iran can rise up and fuel unrest and help overthrow completely. That hasn't come to fruition. They were banking on possibly using the Kurds that they support inside and outside of Iran for some sort of invasion or unrest on the borders. Didn't work. That ended up failing, before it even got started. The U.S. bombing campaign has not worked to make Iran capitulate. Nothing Israel's done so far, and they still have a few other options, to utilize before they got to the nuke option. But I'm absolutely worried when I see
what are those other options? What are the other off ramps here?
No. For Israel, there's no off ramp. Israel wants to go all the way. They want Iran to be so weak and so destabilized and so disintegrated that it can't be a functioning whole country. This is where there's daylight between the Israelis and Americans, because the Americans aren't so much invested in the complete destabilization of the Iranian state to the point where it's just collapsed into smaller states that are fighting each other. That's the Israeli model for the region. They want to see they don't like a whole Iran, no matter who's in charge of it, is a challenge to Israeli hegemony. So that needs to go. And one of the ways you make that go is by state collapse. They want complete state collapse, whereas the Americans aren't quite there, especially because it would destabilize the region. The Europeans don't support that because it would cause a massive refugee crisis and an influx into Europe. And we know how the Europeans feel about refugees. And also now there's the Strait of Hormuz and economic issues. So with Israel, they don't want any off-ramp, which is why they're also so invested. Like right now, they're hitting these universities in Iran, knowing the Iranians are calling for retaliation. We've seen them hit power infrastructure in Iran, trying to provoke Iranian retaliation on Gulf states to get the Gulf states involved, right? Because the Gulf states are super vulnerable to if you take out any of their power infrastructure or especially their water plants, like they'd be unlivable. So there's no off-ramp when it comes to the Israelis. They just
this is why
want
it's so
to
frustrating to listen to Piers and to see that his perspective only changes. Like his only analysis is like, well, I guess there's too many dead bodies over here, so I'm going to scoot a little bit to the other side. But the stated ambitions of governments, the sort of strategic goals of Israel that you just laid out, the reasons why there is this gap between what the America and European powers want versus Israel, based on its own stated regional ambitions, none of that comes into play. There's no like structural or power analysis from Piers and from so many other people politically. It feels like you're watching a toddler slowly figure out physics for the first time. If I, object permanence, if I drop this ball, it falls off my high chair. Like you have these moments of like being happy that he's learned, but also it's deeply frustrating because he is not in fact a toddler. He is a 50-something-year-old man. If I can change gears just briefly for a second, I have to ask you about this dust up that has happened. Did you catch the heat that AOC has caught over accusations that she has been voting to send Israel money for weapons between her and Anna Kasparian?
No, I've missed this. You're going to have to like break it down for me. I have no
Rania.
idea.
Okay. Well, as I'm sure you're aware, over the weekend, there was a plot foiled by the FBI, an assassination plot against former guest of the show, Nardine Kiswani. Very serious, very scary. And AOC, Zoran, and some other local New Yorkers spoke out saying that they're glad Kiswani is safe, et cetera. AOC posted on March 27th, today the FBI and NYPD disrupted a plot by a member of a pro-Israel terrorist organization to assassinate Nardine Kiswani. This is a reprehensible act of political violence. There is no place for it in our city or our country. I am thankful Ms. Kiswani is safe and the assailant is under arrest. Anna Kasparian replied, "You should vote to send Israel more money for weapons, ! Winky face." So seemingly taking issue with AOC's stated sympathies with Palestine, stated sympathies with Palestinian activists like Nardine, and sort of objective willingness to call out an assassination plot as a bad thing, with her votes, which have constructively enabled Israel to do all that it has done, insofar as she has voted to fund the Iron Dome. AOC replies, "I never have voted to send money to Israel for weapons. Feel free to continue lying publicly, though. Those checks don't cash themselves, and you aren't talented enough to be relevant with the truth."
Wow. Oh, wow. So she went in and she's lying, by the way. That's not
It
true.
felt very, exactly. Okay. So it felt very personal. So why do you say AOC is lying with that tweet?
Because she has voted for Israel's defensive weapons. There's no such thing as defensive weapons for Israel. In fact, the Iron Dome infrastructure or the air defense infrastructure that the Americans, that our tax dollars fund to keep Israel protected from the consequences of its actions, absolutely enable Israel to continue being a Nazi across the region. Like the reason that Israel feels it's so easy to just bomb everyone around it out of existence is because they're protected by like 5 layers of air defenses that we pay for. You are protecting them. You're protecting the Nazis from the consequences of sending the Jews to the gas chamber. They should have to face those consequences because those consequences are a deterrence. So AOC is absolutely complicit. Like, Israel getting punched back is a deterrence from Israel committing genocide. So AOC is participating in removing a deterrence factor that allows Israel to more easily and smoothly carry out its genocidal ambitions without its people having to feel the pain of it. Not okay. She's lying.
Bingo. So that is, she's getting dragged. All of the responses to her saying as much. The Z Squirrel accounts. Yes, that's exactly what you just said. You were lying. You vowed to forever send the genocidal Israeli death cult infinite defensive arms that includes tanks, jets, artillery, bombers, burning babies alive in Palestine, Iran, and Lebanon right now. And you smeared opposing that as an evil to desire you smeared opposing that as an evil desire to murder Jews.
Did she actually?
She probably said something like, if you don't support the Iron Dome, you don't care about Israeli lives, it's anti-Semitic. I don't know that she said that, but that seems like what Z is sort of characterizing her as saying. And he included a video, or she, I think, actually, included a video slideshow of things that AOC has said and tweets that she's done and statements she's made that maybe we'll clip in here as well.
I would say that the United States, our responsibility is to the stability and the security of the region. That means being able to support, yes, Israel in its defensive capacities, right? In its ability, in that context.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God. Stop fucking lying. Always lying to me.
And she is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home.
I mean,
okay.
Oh God, that's so, sorry. I didn't know this happened. That's so infuriating.
God bless you for not being online. Now, if I'm more online than you, Rania, because I hold myself to a different standard than my peers, but I think of all of us as kind of online journalism people.
No, I think I've had just like a tunnel vision lately.
Well, you have other things on your mind.
Of like the hourly updates of what's happening with these wars that like there's definitely a lot I've missed, but my God.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this. I mean, AOC is being talked about in the context of 2028. There's a small roster of potential progressives that include Ro Khanna. For some reason, people are putting JB Pritzker in there, and basically AOC. And with all of the frustrations around someone like Gavin Newsom, who's out here talking about the mandatory draft and how he's sorry he ever called Israel an apartheid, Palestine an apartheid state, and walking back anything even marginally progressive that he's ever said. There are a lot of people who are going to say, well, look, AOC is the only saving grace here. She's the only legitimate left-leaning candidate to carry on the Bernie mantle into the next presidential election, which makes it to me very confusing why she is out here beefing. I mean, Anna Kasparian and I have had our differences over the years for sure, but to be out here beefing with the co-host of one of the biggest left news channels in the country does seem like a sort of an inauspicious start.
Yeah, I think it also just speaks to who AOC is trying to pivot towards getting support from. Like that's a performance for her, right? Like going after Anna is a performance to try to get like, they can't help it. They always want that moderate centrist vote. And she also wants to show the Democratic leadership that they shouldn't be afraid of her. I think that's part of it too. Now, look, would I rather have if I had to choose between like AOC and Donald Trump as president, given everything that's happened over the last year plus? Yes, I would rather have somebody like AOC in power because hopefully, she's not a fascist. But like at the same time, I think people like her they're part of a party that enable fascism, which is something that, you've talked about on the show before. And then we just end up in this lesser evil territory again. And I think AOC has demonstrated that she's somebody who's going to capitulate. She's going to capitulate to the center over the left. And she's going to attack the left.
This is something that I've been sort of workshopping as I think about the Naftali Bennett section, sorry to harp on this, was such a masterclass in how you can invisibilize the real harms the real genocide, the real invasions that one country can do by waving the specter of the potential harm to potential lives, and that you are able to do that by asking certain questions and by really leaning in to the deeply inculcated belief that some lives are more valuable than others on the basis of their race and religion. Okay. So those two things are working in tandem. When he says, you know, the I forget if we were talking about Lebanon or Palestine at this point, but the Palestinian child has a rocket in their room. The Israeli child is an innocent that we are supposed to wring our hands if they even have to go to a bomb shelter once, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's Palestinian children getting shot in the head, and front page New York Times stories of CAT scans showing bullets embedded in a child's brain. But the prospect of not voting for an Iron Dome that would allow one Palestinian child to get killed is enough
Or one
to
Israeli,
justify
yeah.
genocide. Sorry, Israeli
Right.
child, exactly. And why am I bringing that up in the context of us talking about AOC? Because even the framing that, of course, it would be better to have AOC than Trump, I think does something similar rhetorically as, do you think Israel has a right to exist?
No, you're absolutely right. And I
Which is
hate that
kinda
I
not
even
the point.
I'm just no, like it's that's the situation we keep being put in, where it's like you end up being like, okay, yeah, I guess it'd be better to have her. Like that's just like the go-to, because Trump is just that bad. And I think, and you know what pisses me off about this is like, what are they doing right now? Like, what are the Democrats doing? I actually think
they're doing no Kings rallies.
I think it's worse. I think it's actually worse. I think the Democrats are happy to sit back and watch Trump cause all of this suffering and mayhem and destruction because it's going to win them the midterms.
Yeah.
Like, I actually think it's like Lebanon, Iran, collateral damage for Democrats to win the midterms.
Yeah.
And then that way they can just let Trump do something that they support, by the way. Like, they support a war on Iran. They support weakening Iran. It's so unpopular, though. Let Trump do it. And then we'll swoop in and be like, we're the good guys, without actually having opposed anything. Because what are they opposing? It's been like pulling teeth to get them to vote for a war powers resolution that's not even binding. Like, it's just symbolic. It's so insane. Like, I'm sitting here a month in, and I mean, thank you, Rashida Tlaib, for putting out this resolution on Lebanon. But it's like, wow, it took a month for like anyone to, and I'm not putting that on her. I know she's been working on it in the background, but like, it's that unimportant. Like, Lebanon getting invaded and having 14% of its territory occupied is like not really that important, despite the untold amount of suffering and destruction it's causing, because it's literally just collateral damage for Democrats to win the midterms.
I think that's right. And that is deeply perverse and unethical. The idea that they're kind of sitting back and rubbing their hands together, happy that the carnage is happening because it gives them a political advantageous in a midterm election. I am curious what you make of, you mentioned Joe Kemp. The lane is wide open, obviously, for there to be a sort of an anti-war Democratic resurgence on that line. But even in the midst of all of this, there's still a chance, I think, that an off branch of the Republican Party, the kind of resistance Republicans, the Tucker Carlson wing of the Republican Party, who have been charting this course of how to take a different position than Trump without alienating the MAGA base, could still run away with this thing. Maybe not in midterms, but certainly in 2028.
Absolutely. No, I think that's very true. I mean, especially someone like Tucker Carlson, he's incredibly popular. And he, like, look, I appreciate that Tucker Carlson is speaking out against genocide, but like, people have to watch the episodes in between the genocide episodes because they're still really right-wing and racist. And like, I don't think people recognize that you can't, like, Democrats could just sit back and see what happens. But even from a horse race element, that's not guaranteed at all, because someone like Tucker could absolutely swoop in and win potentially a presidential election. And don't forget, I think he's got cross-partisan support. Like, there's a lot of people on the left of the Democratic Party who watch him and I think like him because of his takes on Gaza, basically, and on the Israel lobby. So I mean, even from a horse race perspective, I think Democrats are doing this very stupidly. And it's not some foregone conclusion that they're just going to win the next presidency because everyone hates Trump.
Yeah. And the joke, I wanted to ask your opinion on Joe Kent, because I have seen, so there's an argument, there's long been an argument that the left has been, or certain parts of the left anyway, have been too quick to praise people like Marjorie Taylor Greene or other sort of anti-war parts of the MAGA base, that we were too credulous, et cetera. And I would argue most of us are using the fact that they have been willing to make certain kinds of anti-war statements as a cudgel against the Democrats to try to pressure them to do better. I will allow, and I want to ask you about this, do you think there is a segment that is increasingly being too sanguine about Joe Kent and offering him too much praise, embracing him too much, and not being aware enough or primed enough to the possibility that he's being put forward as a leader, as a conservative anti-war leader, in a way that's going to come back and bite the left in the butt if we heap too much praise on him for having stepped down from the Trump administration?
So I don't know Joe Kent's views. I guess I would just automatically just sort of default put him in the category of like probably the Tuckers and the Marjorie Taylor Greenes. But like I want to go back. I do know a bit more about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson. And so I want to just bring it back to them to say, yes, I think what you're talking about is a real issue. And, it's the Steve Bannon model. So, Steve Bannon back in I think it was 2016 made this point of saying that, they really wanted to reach out to and capture that sort of disenfranchised Bernie voter after Bernie Sanders had the Democratic, nomination taken from him by the Hillary Clinton camp.
Yeah.
And that's a real strategy. And I think to some degree, it's worked a little bit. I'm not saying there's some sort of leftist MAGA pipeline, but that said, I think that sometimes we on the left think that we're the ones benefiting from Tucker using his platform. And I do think it's beneficial for Tucker to be using his platform to speak out against genocide in Gaza. And Marjorie Taylor Greene and what she's saying too, great. But I think there's a risk because, again, I want to go back to the episodes in between. So Tucker will do an episode against genocide in Gaza and what Israel's doing to, let's say, the Christians of Palestine, which is a very important thing to point out. And then, the next episode he'll do, and he actually did an episode on this, how Somali Americans are ruining American culture.
Yeah.
And that was before they sent in ICE to Minnesota. So it's this is diametrically opposed to everything we're supposed to stand for. And I do think that there's space for nuance here, but I do think that there is a risk that there are people coming to watch Tucker because they like what he's saying about genocide in Gaza and then staying for the other stuff. And that's what concerns me, is staying for the other stuff.
It is weird too, because he will almost apologize for Islamophobic views that he has articulated in the past in the context of defending Palestine and criticizing Israel. And if you, in isolation, it looks like substantive growth, not just on this one issue, but rebuking some substantive racism, right? And the willingness to say these groups of people are better than others. Islamism and all of these kind of phrases that he and the Bill Maher's of the world like to use have been walked back, not by Bill Maher, but walked back by Tucker a little bit in the context of criticizing Israeli aggression. But then, to your point, are still being leveraged. That kind of some groups are better than others will be leveraged in the context of talking about Somalis in Minnesota. And it's not a holistic change. It's not substantive growth. And I do hope that some of the people who have an opportunity to engage with him directly sometimes at some point in the future draw those connections and the inconsistencies. I'm going to let you go. I just want to play you one last.
Well, before you do, I want to add one thing to what you're saying with regard to the sort of Tucker, Marjorie Taylor Greene element of people. I also think people should be skeptical of what America first means, when they say America first, right? America first, not Israel first. This Iran war is benefiting Israel, not America. But okay, if it was benefiting whatever you think America first means, does that mean the war is okay?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's where 100%. I'm just yeah. So they're just we have to think critically about what these people are saying. Because at the end of the day, they still are on the right.
Yeah, and they're also unwilling to. They are willing to use America first as a reason to object to whatever foreign intervention they don't like at the moment, while not ever wanting to apply that same framework domestically. So it'll be like, don't spend our tax dollars fighting Iran, but not, and so we can spend those tax dollars providing X service to people at home. Like there's been this trend of, because we're living in this like Chinese century where people are sharing clips of these lovely lunches that they're having in China. And, why can't we have that? Why can't we have that? People are like, well, Michelle Obama tried. You guys got really mad at her. Like if you actually press people on, and are you willing to spend that money at home? They don't say yes. And I think, if I recall correctly, when I had an opportunity to interview Marjorie Taylor Greene on Rising, I asked her specifically, do you actually oppose a cut to the military budget? Like you say you don't like this war.
I remember this. Yes.
I think it was like Ukraine we were talking about at the time. You said you don't like this war, but do you actually want there to be a cut to the military budget and an application of this money to domestic services? And she was like, no. So then what does that mean to be America first? Like, why are we so, okay, you want to not do Ukraine so we can fight in Taiwan? You want to not do Palestine so we can fight in Venezuela? Like, what are we doing? Like, it was to be Cuba? Like, what are we doing? Yeah. Okay. Last clip before I let you go. I had to respond to Anthony Blinken's getting a really good question from a student at I believe a Harvard Law Forum or a Harvard Institute of Politics Forum at the Kennedy Center. I think it was a Harvard Law student who asked him this. Let's play this and I want to get your response.
My question has to starts off with, in April 2024, USAID concluded that Israel was blocking aid to Palestinians in Gaza. But despite this, the next month in May, you told Congress, quote, "We do not currently assess that the Israeli government is prohibiting or otherwise restricting aid, which allowed continued weapons supply to Israel, which was overriding your own experts." You had opportunities to distance yourself and your administration from arming Israel, which has committed what leading Holocaust scholars and human rights agencies call a genocide. You rejected them and continued arming Israel. This is your legacy. How do you justify to the countless Palestinians, including thousands of children, that died, from your decisions?
Yes, of course. You couldn't be, and I wouldn't be human if I didn't ask myself every day, could we have done things differently? On the Israeli side, the trauma was such that I believe the determination across that society to take the actions that they took in Gaza was such that irrespective of what we did, they would have continued to do what they did. And cutting off arms, sure, that was an option, but I don't actually believe that, at least in the near term, it would have changed things. And I also believe it would have led to an even wider war. I do remain with a question in my mind about why barely a word was spoken in all those months about Hamas, which was an actor too, and is responsible for so much of what happened. But yes, we all look at it. I certainly look at it and say, maybe we could have done it differently. Maybe we could have done better by the people. I wish we could have.
I saw your mouth hanging open.
I hadn't watched that clip fully through to the part where he mentioned Hamas like that. Wow. Here's what I'll say about Anthony Blinken. I wish for Anthony Blinken to be treated by the universe the way he has treated Palestinians. I don't know, yeah. I mean, that was just. Sorry.
I was thinking similarly. I was thinking about how I was raised in a secular environment and don't really believe in hell, but people like him make me want to. The pivot to Hamas is crazy. The idea that Hamas was not mentioned when all we talked about is Hamas since October 7th, but also the idea that cutting off weapons aid would not have made a difference is a new level of lie that I found to be particularly galling.
I mean, maybe that's how he can sleep at night. Like maybe if he even cares, like, I don't think he actually cares about the Palestinian losses. Like he said that with zero emotion. Like he was like, it sucks, but
what does it mean for him to believe? Because we just finished talking about this in the context of the AC Anna Kasparian duel, that we understand the defensive aid, even though Iron Dome meaningfully insulates Israel from the consequences of its actions, right? So even not funding the Iron Dome would have made a difference. Blinken is going even farther and claiming that not giving them offensive weapons would not have made a difference. Not giving, cutting off support would not have made a difference.
Let's remember what some of those weapons were, by the way. The 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs that they were using to destroy tents. Like, that they dropped in Lebanon. They dropped 80,000 they dropped 80,000 tons of bombs to kill Hassan Nasrallah and destroyed an entire apartment block. Like, you're telling me that cutting off that aid wouldn't have made a difference? Like, people would still be alive today if you'd cut off that sort of, aid's not even the right word. For the Israeli death machine, the Nazi machine. Like, at that point, I mean, I don't even know. I think that Anthony Blinken is a viciously evil person with zero heart. Who should be prosecuted. I mean, it's the nicest thing I could say about him is he should be prosecuted for genocide. That's the nicest thing I can say.
That is the nicest thing one could say. I mean, the other part of my conspiratorial brain was like, does he mean something else? That in his brain is providing them with 2,000-pound bombs, so they level 75% of the buildings in Gaza or whatever the number is, more humane than not giving them bombs and them feeling desperate enough then to drop a nuke. I mean, I know the argument is they wouldn't ever use a nuke in Gaza because it's too close to Israel. But like, it is his reasoning that there's some worse outcome that Israel would have resorted to if not given these arms. And of course, that's not an excuse, right? Because in a world where Israel would be willing to drop a nuclear bomb on anyone, in a normal world, we are fighting Israel. The question that never comes up in these shows, by the way, is why we shouldn't be intervening against Israel.
No, there should be military intervention. There should be. Israel needs to be fought. Like, they have so much weaponry and such a big army. The only way to stop them, well, actually, I mean, the U.S. could stop them by just like turning off the tap. But even then, I think they'd fight. Like, someone would have to fight them. That's
what I'm getting at. Like, is Anthony Blinken sort of getting at that? Even if we turned off the tap, they would have to be taken down, and that's something that we can't do.
Who
that
knows?
Then we'd be nuclear power against nuclear power.
I don't know. Like, I think with Anthony Blinken, he's like ideologically down with the Zionist project. That's what it seems to be with him, that Palestinians are just not human. They're all just like killable, exterminatable. I'll make up a new word. I also think that it's funny you point that out, how it's never like, oh, the Israelis can just say the most batshit insane things. Like, we should level everything and kill everyone and everything needs to be wiped off the map and eradicated and on and on and on. But even the notion of saying there should be force used against Israel, like, nobody would dare. Because it's like
the UN,
blasphemy.
In a normal world, the UN sends troops into. It's just sit there saying, oh, darn, they won't let our tanks in. Shoot, drat. I wish they would let our food, the conditions of the ceasefire not being fulfilled. They're not letting enough food in. Shucks. Let me vote to sanction them, I guess. I mean, it's not going to work because the veto power.
In a normal world, like Trump would be like, in a normal world, the Americans are medievally blocking Cuba from receiving fuel. Like, in a normal world, somebody would intervene against that. But this is the world, this is the barbarism that we live under now. And it's been normalized and brought to us by people like Anthony Blinken, who is the lesser evil.
Well, since you brought it up, I was going to let you go without playing this clip, but there is this fascinating clip of Donald Trump talking about the Russian tanker that's being allowed to enter Cuba. Let's play that real quick, and then I promise to let you go.
In the CNN poll, which just came out. Thank you very much, everybody.
One more thing on Cuba. There's a report that the U.S. is going to let a Russian oil tanker go to Cuba. Is that true?
Well, we have a tanker out there. We don't mind having somebody get a boatload because they have to survive. It wouldn't bother me.
That report is true as far as you know.
Well, I would say, I told them, if a country wants to send some oil into Cuba right now, I have no problem with it.
Do you worry that helps?
Whether it's Russia or not, what?
Do you worry that helps Vladimir Putin, though?
Doesn't help him. He loses one boatload of oil. That's all it is. It's fine. If he wants to do that, and if other countries want to do it, it doesn't bother me much. It's not going to have an impact. Cuba's finished. They have a bad regime. They have very bad and corrupt leadership. And whether or not they get a boat of oil, it's not going to matter. I'd prefer letting it in, whether it's Russia or anybody else, because the people need heat and cooling and all of the other things that you need. Go ahead.
This
Like
man is
what?
gaslighting us. This man is gaslighting us. He literally threatened tariffs on countries that sold oil to Cuba, let alone sent them aid of oil. I don't understand. He's I'm speechless.
I don't. Yeah, we need to stop the blockade we've been having to intentionally strangle this country because the country's strangled and so it needs oil. Like what?
I don't understand. I think he just didn't want to have like a confrontation with the Russians over this boat. I think, but I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just get out of
which.
Yeah.
You know,
he needs to be stopped. He needs to be stopped. Like, Democrats, do something. I don't know. This man needs to be stopped. He's like egomaniacal toddler with all the power in the world, and he's just smashing like everything he can and claiming it's his. And he's also like old and seemingly increasingly demented. So the man needs to be stopped. And I wish I was in a position of power to do something about it, but I'm not. The people who are don't care. Yeah,
maybe it'll be Russia.
Maybe it'll be Russia.
Look at us. We started this by saying, "Oh, it would be treasonous to want a foreign country to come and free you from your leader," and now here we are.
And now we're like, well, hey, we're just hypothesizing. And now we're canceled.
Rania, thank you so much for taking the time when you are really quite literally in the thick of this to come and talk to us and help us understand what's been going on in Lebanon. Where can people continue to find your extraordinary reporting and follow you online and beyond?
Well, I appreciate you so much, Bree, and thank you for having me on. This was so fun and a nice escape, even though we're talking about all the crap here. Yeah. And people can follow me on X at Rania Khalek. I write on Substack sometimes, Rania Khalek as well. And also I have a show on Breakthrough News on YouTube called Dispatches. So follow Breakthrough News wherever you are. We're on all social media platforms.
Please follow Breakthrough News if you're not already. I don't know what to tell you. Somebody asked me recently, like what media I felt like, what news do I like? I'm like slowly radicalizing everybody in my, well, they're all pretty radicalized. I don't want to be patronizing, but some of my new friends. And I was like, I'll make you a list. And Breakthrough News is at the top of the list. So if you're not already, also like the videos, comment on videos, engage, help them in the algorithm because they're up against a lot of bad folks. I don't know if you saw the coverage of, is it CNN or MSNBC? Which one's Jake Tapper on? CNN? That are trying to make it look like they're podcasters because their ratings are so low.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they like have a recording from his almost. He's still in a suit, but he's at his desk with like a podcast mic in front of him.
Oh, nice.
And like is interviewing people from the sofa in his office, like it's like Bill Maher's basement.
That.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to watch that.
Exactly.
Oh God. Oh God.
So let them keep flailing. Support independent media. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can get an extra episode of Bad Faith Podcast every Monday at patreon.com/Bad Faith Podcast. We appreciate you. Take care of yourselves and remember to keep the faith. Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is a podcast. You can catch an extra premium episode every Monday for $5 a month at patreon.com/Bad Faith Podcast. That's patreon.com/Bad Faith Podcast for $5 a month, an extra episode every week. Additionally, please do consider liking this video, subscribing to this channel. It helps us out. It helps independent media beat the algorithm. We appreciate you. And as always, keep the faith.